Today we have another rendition of Divine Relationship Recovery with Deb Goldberg. And before we get started with that, I just wanted to update you a little bit on what's happening with Enlightened World Network. Today we did our very first session of Enlightened World Littles, and that was Deb and I together. And it was a very special time for a little one who is open to hearing about angels, one who is into positivity. And it's really a special time for parents and children to be together with us and just enjoy spending a little time together. We made a snack, we heard a story about angels, and Deb Goldberg sang us a beautiful song that if my kids were little right now, I would be memorizing it and singing it to them as a bedtime song. So that was Enlightened World Littles. Then on Saturday, March 21st, we have Come to Dinner. We know that a lot of folks are feeling isolated right now with the social distancing that we are being suggested to follow. But we know that with that social distancing, we don't have to be alone. We don't have to feel isolated and we don't have to feel alone. And one way to combat that is to come to dinner with Enlightened World Network. So Saturday at 6 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to be joining up together in a Zoom room, and we'll be putting that link out in Enlightened World Network on Facebook. And you are welcome to join us. Bring your dinner, bring a beverage, bring a fun anecdote, something that you don't mind sharing with the rest of us. And we're just going to get to know each other and spend a little time together. Then the next day, Sunday, is a day of transformation. It starts at 9 in the morning and it goes until about 9:30 at night. And it is back-to-back healing and meditation sessions. And it is called a day of transformation. Embrace your divine magnificence. So we know that each of those sessions are going to be very uplifting and to help us see ourselves as divine beings and bringing our best self to the world, especially now at this interesting time we're living in. So with that, I would like to introduce Deb Goldberg, one of our favorite hosts here on Enlightened World Network. Relationship Recovery. Deb, we're so glad you're here with us today.
I don't know what's going on, but it's there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, it is my favorite place to be as well, sharing time with you and Terry, doing all of these wonderful things for our audience. Tonight's show is called Every Relationship You Have is a Relationship with Me, meaning God. And then he asks, shall we dance? So I thought this is what he has told me, and which I've written about in a book. But I thought he asked me today that he wanted me to talk about my experience with God into oneness. And I think it really is apropos based on what the world is going through right now. I was just asking Ruth of what do people do when they don't have hope? Like, what do you do? Who do you talk to? Where do you get your hope from? Where does your peace come from? And unless you have, it's good to have a support system, but it's not the same as having a relationship with divine love, your creator. And, as I was going through, I was in Florida this past week. The situation was a little different than being now back in Pennsylvania. But I was just watching people, how they were going through dealing with all the changes that are happening. And I realized how vulnerable that we feel as a human being, and that we get scared. And then when we get vulnerable and scared, then we do behaviors that are trying to protect ourselves. And it's not the best that we can do for ourselves at times, because we're coming from a place of feeling fear. And so it was, I'm no different. So I had just written how humbling it was that watching other people's behavior and knowing that I'm watching myself, because there is no separation. And at the same time, looking at the seriousness of things, I'm also reminded that I need to laugh at myself, that it's funny, and try to being lighthearted about the situation and laugh at ourselves. But recognizing that we are all these things that we see going on in front of us. It's seeing our own selves. Maybe we're not acting that way right now, but maybe it's in our thought process, or maybe it is a way that we reacted some other time through our life to situations that were difficult, that were challenging. And so I had thought about how the core of humanity is really vulnerability and fear. Fear of the unknown. And this is why we have a relationship with God, that our inner being, so that divine truth and divine nature prevail over feeling vulnerable to an illusionary world.
Deb, what I realized the other day, I was doing pretty well. I wasn't getting really triggered. And then I woke up one of the mornings and I was so triggered. And I don't know if I was dreaming about, not being able to feed my kids, or, about not ever seeing my mother again because she's under lock and key in a memory care center right now. And I was triggered all day. And I went grocery shopping during that place of trigger. And as I'm walking through Target and I'm seeing things like the Easter candy, and I think, oh, this might be our last Easter. So I'm going to make sure I buy the candy that I know my girls love. Or being in like the produce aisle, oh, what if these are the last tomatoes I ever get to buy? And I was triggering myself over and over and over. And the only way I could get out of it was to really sit and meditate. And that really helped pull me out of that. But I'm so glad I experienced it, because when I see other people in that place of abject terror, I can understand it and I can empathize and sympathize. So I'm glad I got to feel it. But I also knew I couldn't stay there. It was not in my best interest to stay in that place.
Right.
So for me, that relationship with God is paramount in getting through this time.
It certainly is. If you're looking for peace and comfort with all the unknown that's in front of us, it's important, like, or whatever divine spirit that you feel connected to, is that you are in that presence as much as you can be. It's humbling to watch your own thoughts and fears come up. And actually, that's what all of this is for, because this is part of how God works with you, is that when you are panicking inside, or, thoughts cause feelings. So whatever you're thinking is creating how you're feeling. Nothing is creating that outside of you. So being able to witness yourself in those moments when you're having a difficult time, whatever's coming up for you, is the perfect time for God to be able to bring peace to you if you allow that. So we're here to allow these constructs to come up, all of these beliefs and fears, because we're trying to break them. We're trying to stop believing in things that are not true. And, I was just saying to Ruth, some of the things that came up for me is as I was watching myself and everybody else, I'm like, what is the fear of toilet paper? Not having toilet paper. And I thought, okay, so people are maybe think it's a stomach flu versus a respiratory flu. So maybe people bought a lot of toilet paper and now there's a shortage. But aside from that, it was for me to see that throughout my life, I had some kind of fear about running out of toilet paper where I don't know where it came from because I haven't run out of toilet paper. And then, other things sort of like food or certain things being missing in the grocery store that are normally there. And I thought, okay, well, I don't ever remember feeling there was a scarcity of food, that I couldn't get food, and that I've been through a time in my life where I didn't have enough money to buy food, and luckily I had generous friends who fed me for a while. But I haven't, like, it's not like food wasn't available. So I'm like, where's this fear coming up? And then the whole germ thing, so, and now that's a fear that I've had also growing up about germs. I'm like, where did these things come from? It's like stuck in the collective consciousness that has been there, all different types of fears, which Jesus has taught me is called soul print energy. And it's just gobs and gobs and gobs of different types of fears and vulnerabilities and scarcities, abandonment, rejection. And so it was really important to me to not feed into all of this stuff, but just see it. And if I started to feel something, I just allow myself to feel. And also I was curious about my thoughts about it.
Right. I understand that, Deb, and certainly being kids of the Depression generation, I grew up, my mother, we were Methodists, so it wasn't even like our religion taught us to have a pantry full of canned goods. It just was just always that way. And so as an adult, then I made the conscious decision to not have a stocked pantry full of things. But that clearly came down to us through the DNA and through the Depression generation. And we did have a time where we almost ran out of toilet paper. It was about in 1969. And there was a time that there was going to be a national, they thought, shortage of toilet paper. And I remember for Christmas buying my mother and my father a pack of toilet paper. So that does go back in there somewhere. But for folks that have grown up hearing about Armageddon and the tribulation, these things trigger those fears of, wow, are we getting to a place where there isn't the food, where we've got, the famine, where we've got the disease that wipes out, millions and millions of people. So folks are being triggered on so many different levels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's all spiritually purposeful for you to witness your own self. It's an opportunity to look at what it is that you're fearful of and what do you do with that fear. And what my message is, excuse me, and what God's telling me is that you need to turn inside. You need to go within. You need to find that peace within. You need to start talking to your inner being so that you have comfort during these times. So I thought what we could do is just get started and just take a few breaths and just close your eyes for a moment. And let's just take a really deep breath in through our nose and release it out through our mouth. And just keep taking some clearing, clean breaths. And allow yourself to come back down and not stay at that heightened anxiety. Because after all, we're here to talk about peace today. We're here to talk about expanding our heart space and our mind. And what we want to do is get really present with the love that's inside of ourselves. And what works for me is taking deep breaths. When I have to bring myself to getting very still and quiet and present with divine love, I do it with my breath. So you want to keep taking some deep breaths, releasing them out through your mouth, and start to feel the calmness that comes over you. Excellent. When you're ready, you can open your eyes and try to stay in that place of peace and calmness. So my topic today is talking about my experience with God into oneness, which has been a 5.5-year process so far. And it is a process. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I have over the other sessions that I've done, is when I awoke from Jesus and then God. It was for them to help support me and allow what we're talking about today, all these constructs that are coming up, is everything that I had pushed down, which most of us do, is repress a lot of our pain in our life. And so all of that pain had to come up to get cleared. And it's cleared with love. It's cleared with divine truth. It's cleared with divine wisdom. So when you start to have a completely different perspective about what you're experiencing, and it's coming from truth with a capital T. So a capital T is, for me, is divine truth. And this is what happens on the spiritual journey as we keep going inside and digging up everything that needs to be brought out, that is creating behaviors for you, thinking styles, actions, affecting all of your relationships, and you don't even realize that it's doing it. So I spent a lot of time meditating, talking with God and Jesus, and it was almost like sitting at the knee of Jesus and God and learning about myself, and learning that everything that I see outside of me is my own consciousness. It is God. So it's almost like you're here by yourself. You're here as consciousness, and everything you see is part of that consciousness. So I see divinity everywhere, and then I see humanity. I see a mixture of both of those things, because we are living in a 3D world. So for me to start understanding myself, I had to spend a lot of time with them, getting reversed of what I learned about myself and what I learned about this world. And that takes time of you wanting to know and ask questions. And I think with me, I was so freaked out because I had so many emotions coming up at the same time. I didn't know how to manage my feelings. I didn't have any other place to go. And so they were there to sit and process everything that I was feeling. And for the most part, understanding where it came from. Not everything, but for the most part, I understand where all of those thoughts or actions came from. And so we're always being driven by these other parts of ourselves. There's so many different aspects to us. And so spending time with them allowed me to start viewing myself differently and viewing other people differently. Every face that you see, you can say is the face of God. It's consciousness. It's only divine love. So, Ruth, when you started to awaken to divine love, did you experience anything like that yourself, of having to process and see yourself differently or see life differently?
I had a whole lot of processing that took place. I felt like I was completely under construction. I mean, I looked the same from the outside. Everything that made up me, all of the constructs I believed in, everything I thought I knew about myself, it was all out the window. And then came rebuilding back who I am today. And that's been a long process. I don't think I'm ever going to finish until I'm dead.
Right.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah, it is. And it is a deconstruction process. And it is understanding unconsciousness. It's understanding the illusion and everything that you've bought into. And as you go through time, so it doesn't mean because I've gone through that, and it doesn't mean that I'm still not doing human things. It doesn't mean that I still don't feel. It doesn't mean that I don't get vulnerable or scared at times. It doesn't mean that sometimes a construct is still driving me, that a faulty construct. A lot of times we're being driven by very young parts of ourselves, 5 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, 3 years old. And you don't even realize that that part of you is still making decisions for you. And so this deconstruction process is constantly going on. Now, when I first met God, this was funny. Okay. I saw him as this really ugly, ogre kind of looking thing. It was like, and he was like really big, and it like looked at something out of Game of Thrones or something. I don't know, something, it just was creepy to me. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm seeing God as. And I see God as male. And God, I believe, shows up to me in masculine form because of healing that I needed to do from men in my life, my father, stepfather. And so I'm like, okay, this is God, is not exactly what I thought I would be perceiving him as. But here it is. And so if you're God, okay. And I was accepting God the way that he looked, whatever. But I realized that, our mind, this human mind is has to see images or symbols to relate to. So here it is, choosing this really ugly, big man. And I thought, well, what is this? Well, it took me some time to figure out that I was projecting my own ugliness onto God. Okay. And I didn't realize that at first, but our mind is doing this, even in our spiritual conversations, in our spiritual meditation, in our connection with the divine. Our mind is producing images and symbols so that we can relate to it in some way. And so God has morphed into different looking things as I've gone along, and into like somebody, what is it, Lord of the Rings, with the pointy ears and the long blonde hair, very gentle. So it was a complete opposite of what I saw before. Now he looks to me more human. And so there's been this process of me spending time with God and taking me to my own private beach island, and there would be a long table there, and he and Jesus would be sitting with me. And these visions would just happen automatically. I didn't know what I was getting into every time I meditated. And then there's times where I try to control it and make it the same way. So there's this process of spending time through this deconstruction, and yet our mind still wants to see God as separate, Jesus is separate, the angels is separate, and there is absolutely no separation at all, right?
You know, Deb, that for me is always a tricky one. As much as we talk about it, is where I can go with that. I can, when I see God, it's very different. He's never looked in human form to me. Always more of an amorphous energy, huge and vast. And I can sit at the foot of God and feel it, and I can feel God looking at me, looking through me, seeing me in only divine form.
Mhm.
And I know that that divine form of me is the image of God. So I can go there. The angels still to me look almost three-dimensional, as if they are there just them, but I've also seen me in them and them in me. So I can get a lot of what you're saying there.
Mhm. Yeah. So in my mind, as I kept, and I totally understand what you're saying. What my mind does is say, I want to see you as separate. I don't want to give up seeing you. I don't want to give up feeling your arms wrapped around me. I don't want to give up seeing you sit by my bed when I'm sick. I don't want to give up seeing you in physical form. And so Jesus has worked on that a lot with me, telling me that he's me, I'm him. There's no separation. There's no difference. We're all just divine consciousness. We're all just God. And for this illusion, we get this whole support system of divine love, whether it's Buddha or angels or whatever anybody believes. And it's absolutely beautiful, the whole story in itself. But Jesus worked pretty hard on saying, okay, you are the light. You are no different than God. You are no different than me. I am you. You are seeing your own reflection. And so we spent time doing practices of going into the ethereal and seeing, I guess, the universe or a galaxy, whatever you want to call it, and that it's all dotted with light, right? And so we would fly off into the ethereal. And I know this all sounds crazy, but this is what goes on in my meditations. He's like, come on, let's go. And I'm like, okay. And you get the same thing.
I definitely get the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. So we both would turn into light. And then we would take our place somewhere in the ethereal within that light. And then what he was trying to show me is that you're just one with this light now. There's no separation. You are part of the same light that you see all around you. And that was interesting. And then I had a lot of training from a mama angel called Angelica. And what I was being told is that it's my job to balance the universe. Because the universe lives inside all of us. There is absolutely nothing outside of us. All we are is consciousness. All we are is divine love. So she said, it is when you are feeling out of sorts, you have to learn how to balance this energy. And so we went through this process of balancing the planets and then teaching me that I needed to turn into light. And Jesus was there with me. And so we would both turn into light, and then our lights would merge. And then we would energetically together send out love into the universe. So this was another lesson in oneness. And so there are times where I feel one. I feel the presence of one. In fact, yesterday coming home traveling, I felt in God's presence, in the oneness, the whole time I was traveling. And, but that's not a typical everyday 24/7 thing. Is knowing that you are divine substance. You are protected. You are safe. You are abundant. You are love. That anything that you perceive happening outside of you is not, basically, there's no truth to it. You don't get hurt as spirit. It is just an experience that you're having. And so God keeps taking me up into a cloud during meditation with Jesus, and we're sitting on a cloud watching me down below. So it's almost like what he's saying is, you've already done this. Your life's already happened. It's over. What you and I are doing is reviewing it, and you're watching yourself react to everything that happens. You are sitting here with me watching your own self on the screen of life. And it's pretty profound, seeing that and seeing it from a higher place. But at the same time, I'm still wanting to see us as separate.
I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
It is a little, it's kind of like a mind trip sometimes, because I will be in meditation and I have seen truly very similar things to what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And I have felt that symbiotic connection with the divine. And then I'm back here in my body and I'm, experiencing this. But sometimes with the work that we're doing with Enlightened World in particular, it's almost like I'm sitting back and realizing I've already done this, but how did I do it? Mm-hmm. And so I'm just waiting for, it's almost like for the memory of, oh, yes, okay. And then I contacted this person, and then I reached out and I did this. And then I live that, which was really just remembering what I had done previously. Sometimes it's a little messy in your mind.
Yeah, everything just keeps unfolding in divine time. So I think it's important to understand all of this, that your relationship is with yourself. Your relationship with God is your relationship with yourself. And so what I have learned through it is how much I keep projecting my own self, my faulty beliefs onto God, and then how that affects our relationship. So sometimes God goes quiet. And then I'm like, why can't I hear you? Why can't I hear you? When you can really always feel, divine presence if you want it. And, there's times where it's sort of like, okay, it's time to start building your confidence and knowing that I'm there, even if you think you're not hearing me, which is ego stuff, okay? But there's times where it feels like God pulls away, but that's not happening. He wants you to keep drawing into him and drawing in and coming in, that you're thirsty, you are hungry, and you want that more than anything else. At the same time, it doesn't mean that you give up your life. It doesn't mean that, you have to be a certain way, or you have to become a monk or something like that. There's a whole life planned for you by God. He's written your story. He knows what your story is, and it's unfolding exactly the way he wants it to. He's expressing himself through you all the time. Every relationship, every person that you have in front of you, you're acting out your relationship with God. Because, if we come from not remembering that we're spirit, then we feel rejected, we feel abandoned, we feel separate from God. And even though you might say on a intellectual level that you do know that you're not separate because of all the teaching, but if you don't experience that, it's a whole different thing. This is about experiencing the presence of love within yourself at all times. Because if I feel abandoned or rejected, or that's my fear, I'm going to go into every relationship expecting subconsciously that somebody is going to abandon and reject me. Or now, if I'm not hearing God, well, see, where did you go? You left me. So there is a constant acting out of your own belief system, and that he wants to help you with it, because he wants you to know what you're doing, what's going on with you, that you're only pure love, and that you can never be apart, and that love does not waver. It is the same always, and you're always protected. And so imagine all these relationships that we go in with people, whether they're a love relationship, a romantic relationship, with your children, with your parents, family, co-workers, your supervisor. Everything is a projection of, and so you're seeing both. You're seeing your divine, your divinity, and you're seeing your humanity being projected outward and coming towards you.
Deb, I was reminded when you were talking about when you see yourself as separate, then you can easily feel abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was remembering Christ. Even Christ yelled out, "Why have you forsaken me?"
Mm-hmm.
So even Christ, who had this intensely close relationship with God the Father,
Mm-hmm.
also felt that separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's part of being human. It's part of this is an illusion. So while we're here in this illusion, we believe we're human. So these are all human tendencies, being vulnerable and scared. If I didn't have the connection within me, I don't know how I would handle my life. I know I would not be handling it well. I mean, I have moments where I'm in conflict within myself. And that's another issue of the conflict that you have within yourself is acted out outside of you and with God. So the conflict of being human and divine, and there's this chatter that's constantly going on. It is constantly stripping you of your confidence and your joy. So learning not to listen to that voice, learning not to get into conflict, you're learning how to be in harmony within yourself, being both for while you're here. Even though I'm told that, I'm just imagining I'm human, that all there is you're divine, you're me, I am you. While we're here, it's really hard to grasp onto that. It's really hard for your mind to wrap around that. So this is a huge process of integrating, and that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother thing about integrating. There's nothing to integrate. Our mind believes we need to integrate because you already are. You already are. Because so I talk about, I would say a lot, oh, I want to integrate something, mind, body, spirit. He says, there is nothing to integrate. You are already that. You believe that you are not that. This
Right.
whole journey is how do you remember, how do you believe and have the faith and trust and the confidence that that is what you already are, that God is good, and that you can let go. Like you keep trying to be somebody that you're not, that you are, that I'm not, you are already that. So so the oneness is within your own self, is how do I accept my divine self exactly the way that I am, in divine perfection in every single moment.
So the more we say to ourselves, I need to pull body, mind, and spirit together, or I need to be more spiritual, it's not true.
Mm-mm. It's not true. It's because we won't believe that we're perfect, that we're made and created exactly as we are, that we are divine just like this. And it's because we have so many aspects of ourselves. We're so diverse inside of our and complex within our own self. It's like, well, we can't be that. We can't be, or you know, I did this or I did that, and I don't think I'm good enough at this or that. And so there you go, tearing yourself apart and saying, like, how could I be divine? Because I'm putting divine on a silver, I'm putting it on a pedestal, instead of saying, I am that. I'm already that, exactly the way I am. There's nothing to integrate. And I've written a lot about integration, and I prayed for integration. Then they started saying, there's nothing to integrate. You just need to accept the truth of who you are.
I am divine.
Mm-hmm. I am one. I am the universe. I am everything I see outside of myself. It is called coming from my consciousness. It is, and you're having help with it because God says, and Jesus said, this illusion has been created for us. It has been created for us. So we're playing a role in it. And we have free will of how we perceive something. And that's, so when you're sitting with God reviewing your life right at this moment, it's already done, it's already happened. And it's about, what is your reaction as you're viewing it? Has my perception changed? And if my perceptions change, then my actions have changed, my behaviors.
So I'm putting myself in that place of being in the grocery store here in the physical, with the option of, do I fill my cart with all of these things, knowing that I'm taking the last of some of these things? How give me the overlay of, I'm divine and all of this is in the past. It isn't really happening now. Give me the overlay of how that pans out in the grocery store.
Well, you know, I went to the grocery store earlier, and it was funny to watch. And of course, certain things were missing from the shelves. And my son and his wife in San Diego can't find a whole lot of things there, and they needed baby wipes, and of course there's no toilet paper anywhere, but I saw some baby wipes, and you know, and actually there was a lot of them, And I'm thinking, do I need to take some of these and mail it to them so that they have it? And am I going to take them all, right? Or can I take 3 and leave them there for the other people that need them, for the babies, or can I not believe in scarcity? Can I believe that my children are able to find what they need, that God is providing for them too? And so there's this mushmash that goes on of both things. So I bought 3 and sent it to them. And I thought, I have toilet paper at home. Maybe I should go home and mail some toilet paper to them, which sounds absolutely crazy, right? But I said, no, they're gonna be okay. I believe that they are taken care of. I don't want to believe in scarcity. I don't want to feed into the fear. And I actually had this happen the night before I was traveling to come back here. Sometimes you think you're hearing divine direction, and it's the ego playing games with you. And so I kept hearing, oh, you're not gonna make it home tomorrow, that it's gonna be the day after, you're not gonna get home. And it was constant. And so then I started worrying, oh my goodness, should I change my flight? And I was going to sleep at the time, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna just go to sleep, and I'm not gonna worry about this right now. And when I woke up in the morning, I was still hearing that. And I said, I understand that's what I'm hearing, but I don't believe it. I know that I'm going home today, and I know that I'm going to have great flights, and I'm not going to have a problem, and I'm not feeding into that fear. So, and I got home with no problem. So it's about sorting out some of that stuff in your head, because the spiritual ego makes believe it's God. It makes believe it's, to me, makes believe it's Jesus, makes believe it's the highest part of me, and starts talking to me and feeding into my, making me feed into fears. So it is knowing that you are completely taken care of at all times, but you're still in the illusion of being human, and so you are going to feel vulnerable at times, and you're going to be fearful, but you can minimize it. You minimize it by staying in the presence of God, and within yourself, knowing that you are magnificent, that you're a miracle, that you are abundant, that there is no such thing as scarcity. It's how you're viewing things. And I know sometimes that the way that our stories play out, it feeds right into those beliefs.
Right. And I really believe that whatever you keep feeding your mind is where your beliefs are going to go. So if all you're doing is watching the news all day, you're probably going to be quite agitated and frightened.
Yeah. Yes, there's a lot of people blaming, that maybe the United States didn't act fast enough with this whole thing, with the virus. We've all heard, that doesn't do anything. When we get into those places, is because we don't want to feel the panic within ourselves. So it's easier to blame. And that can be calmed down, and you can have peace inside at any time. But no matter whatever we're feeding ourselves, whatever thought that we had that created this momentum of fear or anger or blame or whatever it is, and allow that love within us to just pour over us, and it's like a healing balm. It just snuggles you right up. It's like having a blanket of love wrapped around you. It is being able to breathe and know that you're okay. And that amazing is you're feeling your own self. You are feeling the love of your own self. That is, you say, you're feeling God, but you're feeling you. That's who you are. It's very powerful.
Deb, thank you for this reminder that we are one with the divine, that we have the option of our mindset for the day. And our mindset impacts our beliefs, and really it impacts what our future is. So thank you for that reminder today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it was God's topic. So it is very important for people to keep going within, and now actually people have a little bit more space in their schedules. A lot of people are working from home. Things have calmed down in certain ways. It is a perfect time to go inside some more and ask these questions within yourself, and allow yourself to hear the answers.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I know that we need to wrap up here today. Thank you for this divine relationship recovery, knowing that this particular episode is about our own relationship with ourselves, and our own relationship with God. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I am going to answer some of the questions that are on. I didn't realize that we had some questions or people making some comments. I will get back to everyone. And so I love everybody. God bless you. And hang with us this weekend.
Exactly. And to everyone who's listening, thank you so much for being here with us. We love you, and God bless. Take care.